All right, so from here, I think we're going to dive into our first time lapse video. I want to set something up first, but I think now that you have a sort of grasp of a lot of the techniques that we're using for modeling our car here, I think now I can jump into a time lapse and you can kind of just see me working and progressing at a little bit of a quicker speed. I'm not going to be doing anything that I haven't explained already. If I do, I'll try to stop and explain it. Maybe in the next video, I'll stop and give you an explanation if I end up doing anything that I haven't already explained. But the one thing I do want to do here is I want to set up the profile curve for this area right here where it kind of slopes all the way around and kind of all the way back here to our door. So I want to set up that profile curve, and and then we'll jump into a time lapse. So I'm going to do a very similar thing that I did down here, where I just sort of extruded down an edge. That way I don't have to start with a new plane or anything like that. So let's go ahead and take, let's see, let's just take this edge right here. And let's do this from our front view. And I'm just going to extrude this up a little bit and then extrude it up a little bit more. And then I'm going to delete this here. So now we just have a plane that we can kind of move around, and it's already sort of in the right location. So now as I'm looking at my reference here, I think this is a little bit exaggerated because of the camera angle and how the camera is sort of giving us a little bit of perspective distortion, but it does sort of slope down a little bit right here. So I want to make sure I try to get that in our sort of profile curve. So let's try to get this one little piece right here. And again, we don't have really enough information here to kind of go off of our orthographic views, right? We really need to rely on our photographic reference. Our orthographic view, we're just kind of using as sort of placement and proportions. So I'm just going to go through and kind of line up this line so it kind of lines up with our door scene. Just, a lot of times as I'm modeling, I'll do little things like this just as I notice them, just because I have the habit of when I see something to deal with it. Otherwise, I forget about it, and then I might not deal with it until it's a little bit too late. But we're going to slope this back just a little bit. And let's look at this from our top view. I think this is probably a more accurate view of what we want to create here. So we're going to go into our top view, and we'll just extrude this straight in, and that's probably good enough for that part. And I'm just going to go ahead and, like I generally do, I'm just going to kind of extrude this all the way out to this corner right here. And I kind of want to angle this this edge where it's starting to face this way, because it is going to kind of wrap around a little bit. And then I'm just going to make some slices here that will line up with these edges like this. And then I'm just going to kind of move them down to sort of match the slope. And again, right now I'm just affecting the top view. I'm going to need to adjust this from all of my views, right? But I want to do this very slowly. I want to take my time, and I want to check all views. Because if I don't check all views, and if I don't make sure that it's right and correct in all of my views, then I'm just going to have to probably end up redoing it, right? So it's worth taking the time to double check and make sure you have things looking right in all of your views. That's a very, very important step. I don't know I don't know how else to emphasize that. But let's then look at it in our front view here. And so we're just going to go into our vertex mode, and we're going to slope it down just a tiny bit to kind of match the slope of our hood. Just a little tiny bit at a time. Remember, if you make these tiny changes and not big changes, it's easier to correct mistakes when you make tiny changes like this. And we can kind of line these up a little bit better too. I kind of experience when I'm, looking at student assignments and things like that, I experience a lot of people just wanting to kind of rush through because, maybe they're stressed about getting it done on time, and so they kind of really rush through things, right? At the end of the day, that's going to cost you even more time. There's no better way to say this, but you're wasting time by rushing, right? Because if you get things wrong as you're rushing, you're going to have to go back and redo them at some point when you realize that you've rushed it and it's not great, right? So you might as well just spend the time, take your time, get it right in all of your views before you move forward. Right now, again, I want to rely much more on my reference that I have here and not so much on my orthographic views. So this does kind of wrap around. Sometimes it's difficult to get into your vertex mode. So I think something like this. Again, I'm trying to primarily look at my reference here and not so much rely on my orthographic views. My orthographic views are primarily just a loose guide. I still want to follow them. I don't want anything to be that off. So I still want to try to abide by and adhere to my orthographic views. But at the end of the day, if you want to trust your photographic reference over your orthographic reference, it's just gonna make more sense if you do it that way. All right, and then I'm gonna grab this edge again, and for this one we're gonna extrude this all the way back. Kind of moved it down a little bit. I'm gonna extrude this all the way back here to this door and move that down like that. And then I'm going to add in some edge loops that sort of match the placement of these. And we could try to slope these. I think they do have a little bit of a curve to them. So I'm going to slope these a little bit. And again, I want to make sure that all of my curves have a nice swoop to them, nice curved edge. I like see how this one kind of goes down and then up and then down. So I just want to make sure everything has a very nice smooth flow. That's going to ensure that I get smooth surfaces everywhere. Again, so it may seem like I'm not doing much here, and you're right, I'm not doing much, but by just making sure that I get it right here, I'm actually saving myself a lot of time. I know that might not make sense. A lot of the art we learn, like drawing, right? It's just rush to get a bunch of details on the paper, and then you slowly refine it. This is a little bit differently, right? We want to take our time and make sure we get all of these details right, because we're going to. It's hard to explain, right? We need to make sure we get these details right off the bat. Or as close as possible, and that will make it easier to kind of adjust them later. So then let's look at our top view again. And I'm going to kind of just line these up. Right, now let's take a look at it from our front view or our perspective view. Let's see how that looks smoothed. That looks pretty good. Now let's see if we can just bridge some of these guys together. I'm not going to bridge them all together, but I'm at least going to get started bridging some of these together like this. I'm going to do a little bit at a time, right? So maybe just to the corner right here. And then I'm going to add in another little edge loop and kind of adjust that so it swoops, right? So it's not just going into a straight line, it's kind of swooping a little bit. All right, so if we look at this in smooth mode, see a nice little swoop there. And then we'll continue that and just bridge these up. I'm not going to worry about that extra edge loop there. We can connect that here in a second, but we'll go ahead and bridge these up. And with this one, it's a little bit interesting looking at it here, right? Because we do have a little bit of a swooping shape in this direction, right? It's doing something sort of like this, right? We can see right there, but then by the time it gets over here, it's kind of just straight down. So I want to try to get that in there correctly. So I think what I'm going to do is we'll go ahead and just add in another edge loop here. And just one at a time, I'm going to grab these edge loops and just kind of move them around into position. So something like this, because I do want that to swoop quite a bit. And then just kind of move the verts around. Looking at them at all angles. And then these guys, by the time I get over here, it's kind of just in a straight line, straight down. So what I'm going to do to sort of achieve that is we're going to just delete these edges altogether and we're going to remake them. Because what happens if we control delete them, they're going to just go into a straight line now. So now when I come back and remake these edges, it's just going to kind of morph into a straight line. And if we need to, we can adjust them a little bit, but let's just see how that looks when we go into smooth mode. I think that looks pretty good. All right, see how it goes from a straight line here, and then it kind of goes into a swoop right there. So now we just need to fix this guy right here, and I'm going to do that with my target weld tool. And I'm just going to weld this to that other point. We may need to do that from the inside. What we can do is we can just kind of move this one, right? And then I will target weld this to that. And then we'll take a look at what that looks like in smooth mode. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. That's kind of what we're aiming for there, right? If anything, I think that should be up a little bit higher. So let's actually go in and I'm going to just take all of these edges on this top row here. And we're just going to move all these up a little bit higher like this, and maybe in a little bit. Let's move this edge a little bit higher. And yeah, I think that's looking pretty cool. From here, we can take this one and let's just add in. I may change the way this is set up, but for now, we'll just add a couple little edge loops right here and bridge these together. Like this. We'll add an edge loop here, kind of move that down gently, slowly, to be in the same position as this other guy. And then we can use target weld, or we can just select both of these verts like that and use collapse, not collapse. What do I want? Merge to center. This is the one that I want. Also found under edit mesh, merge to center, and that would just merge those two verts together. That overall is looking pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with how that's turning out. Now, there's still a lot of things. I want to point out that a lot of this stuff is in no way finished, right? Again, we still have a lot of ngons here. There's some serious rerouting I want to do to some of this geometry here, but I'm not super concerned about that right now. We can come back and kind of edit that later. Our forms look good when we hit smooth. Our topology may not be the best, but all of our shapes and forms look really nice and smooth. And that's, for now, that's all I'm really concerned with. So we're going to move on. Now, before I jump into the time lapse, that's the next thing I'm going to do, is I want to set up my back view, right? So that's the one thing that we didn't do before. We didn't set up our back view. Now, I like to put this in place of my front view, and then we can kind of switch between our front and back view. So what I'm going to do in my front view is I'm going to go to Panels, Orthographic, New, and Back. And that's just going to create a new back view for us. From here, we're going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and we're going to bring in the same image that we've had before. And now we know what the scale should be, right? Because if we go back and look at any of our other orthographic planes, image planes here, we can see that our scale is 65. So I know this scale needs to be 65 as well. So I'm going to make this 65. Now this one, I want my image plane to be on this side of my model, not on this side, because we're looking at it. See, here's my little camera icon here. So we're looking at it in this direction. We're looking at it from behind. So I want my image plane to be on the other side of my car. You always want your car or your model that you're working on to be in between your image plane and your camera. Otherwise, you'll get weird issues where you either can't see your widget to move things around, or you can't select vertices or something like that. So always make sure that your image plane is, or your model is in between your camera and your image plane. And now we can come up here, and what we're seeing here with the model is the back side of the model. So I'm just going to kind of grab this and line it up as loosely as I can. We could probably do the same Y value that we have these other ones at. So this is a Y value of 287. So we'll make this one also a Y value of 287. So that will basically ensure that our Y placement, our vertical placement is good. And then I'm just going to kind of move it to kind of get it in the right location here. sometimes it's kind of difficult to, you know, because our widget's way over here. So what we can do is we want to move it in the Z translate. So what you can do is if you click on your Z translate here and you just middle mouse drag, you should be moving it around, although it doesn't look like it's moving around. To make sure we're in the right. There we go. So just want to get that about right. And now we have a back view set up, so we can just switch this back to our front if we want to look at our front. Whoops. One last thing we need to do again is go to our attribute editor for that image plane and drop our alpha gain down to something like 0.3. And then I want to say looking through camera. So it's only looking through that back camera. And then we can take our camera here and Control H to hide it. All right, so now I'm just going to jump into a time lapse. I'm going to be doing a lot, right? So I'm going to be creating a lot of this stuff here, probably working on the back a little bit. Again, I'm only thinking about the big details. I'm not concerning myself with little things like the seams, rear view mirrors, reflectors, lights, things like that. I'm just concerning myself with the big details, the primary form. And then when, like I said, if there's anything that I'm doing where it's something that I haven't quite explained before, I will stop, or maybe in the next video, I'll stop to give that a little bit of an explanation of what I did at any point. But from here forward, I'm just gonna work on the model, and I'm gonna start filling out these areas, pretty much using all the same techniques that I've used up to this point. All right, so I thought I would try something a little bit different and just do like a voiceover of what's going on here in the time lapse. Now, I'm probably not going to talk through all of this, but just so you're not sitting in silence and you get a little bit of an explanation of what exactly I'm doing here during the time lapse. Here, I'm just kind of laying out the contour line for the back of the car and just making some adjustment to the area around the window. I think I noticed that it was just a little bit too far in. It didn't really match up my reference orthographics very well. So just making some adjustments there. A lot of this, what you're going to see here in this video is it's pretty slow work. And I think you'll notice that at some point. A lot of time I spend just looking at the highlights and kind of seeing how the highlights roll off the surface and making sure that I don't have any weird lumpiness or rolling highlights or kind of areas that just look kind of lumpy. I don't really know a better word for that than lumpy, but sometimes as you're sort of making all these different forms and having them kind of meet up with each other, you will get kind of like a lumpy or sort of undulating surface, so to speak. So a lot of my time here, I'm just spending looking at those highlights. You just see me do that there, where I'm just kind of backing out, smoothing my model, and kind of looking at the highlights. A lot of this also is just making small adjustments, right? So like I'm noticing little things about my model that I don't like, and I'm just going ahead and fixing those issues as I can. So, you know, this is not like a this isn't a very formulaic thing, right? There's no step-by-step process. This is art, right? So we're trying something, and when that doesn't work, we basically just try something else, try it a different way, and eventually we kind of get it down. And here I'm using the B key. So if you hit B, this will toggle soft selection, and it will kind of give you an area of fall off, so it lets you move multiple vertices at once. That is the B key. It's a very sculpty way of moving vertices around. Now I'm starting on this. This for me is always the most difficult part, is the back sort of bumper area, the back hatch or whatever of the car. I don't know what it is about it, but I think it's probably has something to do with, I just find it the least interesting part of the car. So I just don't enjoy working on it as much as like I do the front or the side of the car. So it's something that I always kind of struggle with because I want to do it good, right? I want it to look good, but I'm eager to get past it so I can just work on other more interesting parts of the car. This I do struggle with a little bit. I'm trying to get like this round shape. If I'm looking at the reference, there's a very round shape right here. And I do end up with a little bit of sort of undulation. There I am checking out that highlight again. I do end up with a little bit of a lumpy surface, but in this situation, I'm not too concerned about it because there's a lot that's going to be added to this. There's going to be a lot of seams. The fender wells will allow me to sort of mask a lot of that. Not necessarily mask it, but maybe more so like draw attention away from that area. What you just saw me use there was the relax tool that's in your sculpting menu. And what that will do is sort of relax the edge flow of your geometry without changing the shape. Now, I try not to use that too much. I was just kind of testing it out there to see how well it worked. And I actually don't think it really did much, to be honest. But sometimes you can use that to sort of even out your edge flow without actually changing the shape. So again, here I'm trying to really get that round surface of that back corner of the car down. You'll see me checking the highlight on that quite a bit. Now again, I don't think once we get the windows in and other little details in, I think it will draw attention away from any really sort of unsmooth surfaces or undulating surfaces. So I'm not super concerned with it, but I do want to get it the best I can possibly get it. So right here, I'm just completely ignoring the back window. I will add it in later, but I would consider that more of a lower tier detail, more of like a secondary form. So I'm just going to focus on the main form of the back part of the car, and then I can cut that back window in at a later time. And I'm going to deal with a lot of the forms that way, right? So you'll notice that I didn't really pay any attention to the doors. Anything that's sort of the same primary form, I'm going to ignore any of those kind of secondary forms within that primary form, and I can just cut them out later. The roof and sort of like the cab of the car, I think I would consider that's kind of the primary. I would say that's part of the primary form, but it's not as crucial of a form as the main body of the car, right? Now this back part in particular is a little bit challenging. I think what I would consider the primary form overall is just to kind of focus on car paint, right? Anything that has this blue, in the example that I'm looking at now, anything that has sort of like the blue car paint on it, minus the bumper. You'll see that the front and the back bumper do have a little bit of car paint on them. I'm going to kind of ignore everything that isn't car paint right now. And I think for the most part, I'm going to consider that the primary form. I do have kind of an edge loop going around that back window, as you can see all the way over there on the right. I do end up eventually deleting that because it just kind of roughens the surface a little bit, or again, it kind of makes it looking a little bit lumpy. So I do get rid of that just to simplify it, get a little bit more of a smooth form. And I can add that back in later when I do cut in the window. But again, right now I'm just sort of trying to get that primary form, and I'm not too concerned about like windows and things like that yet. This part is pretty straightforward. The roof isn't super complicated. So I'm just, trying to knock out the roof here. And I also want to point out that a lot of this stuff, I may just decide to completely delete at some point, right? So I'm just sort of, I think it's important to point out that I don't really know what I'm doing, right? I mean, I know how to model, and I know the tools that I'm using very well, but I don't really have a plan for anything, right? I'm just sort of trying things, and if they work, I keep them. And if they don't work, I will delete them, like I just deleted that edge loop there, and I'll try something else, right? So I get a lot of students that are sort of paralyzed by the possibility that they can do the wrong thing. And usually my advice to that is just do the wrong thing, right? Make that mistake. I think you're going to learn a lot more from your mistakes than you learn from your successes. So I think if you just try it, and if it doesn't work out, that's a good thing, right? Because you learned that's something that you tried right there, and that's something that you can take forward with you to your next project, right? You've tried that before, it doesn't work, or maybe it kind of worked. Maybe it'll work again in a different situation, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. I encourage you to make mistakes, because you can correct them. It's not the end of the world. This is always a challenging part right here, getting that. I think that's called the pillar on a car, that part of the car right there. I think that's called the pillar. So trying to get that right. As you can see, my reference, there is a little bit of a curve to it. So I'm trying to curve that outward and have it look good. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the overall shape of it so far. And again, there is a little bit of lumpiness. There is a little bit of like lumpiness or undulating, especially in that back part right there. But again, there's going to be a window there. So we're going to cut that whole area out. So I'm just kind of focusing on areas, try to bring importance or priority to areas that are going to have car paint, right? That I'm not going to cut out later on. So I'm being a little critical of the highlights, but try not to be too critical. There's nothing here that I can't fix later, right? There's nothing here that I need to fix right here at the moment. And again, worst case scenario, I know you don't like to hear it, but you can always just delete the entire area and kind of just start from scratch. I think as any artist, you have to kind of build your confidence. And part of that is building the confidence to recreate something from scratch. You did it once, you can do it again. So don't be afraid to, if you don't like the way a part of your model is turning out, just don't be afraid to delete it and try the whole thing a different way, right? It's not the end of the world. You can't look at it as a waste of time. And I think at some point here, what I'm doing, all this work that I'm putting in right here on this back part, I end up deleting all that just because I don't like the way it's turning out. So it's definitely something that I do a lot, is I'll just, go in and delete whole sections of my car and completely redo them. That's a part of modeling. There's definitely people that can do it all in one go. I think those are the people that kind of do this as a living and just model hard surfaces as a living. That's not me. I don't do that. I teach, so most of my experience modeling is doing demos in the classroom and sort of helping students and sort of solving problems with students. So I definitely get a lot of problem solving experience. But as far as professional car modeler, that's not me. I'm just, basically just doing the best I can with all the techniques and skills that I've learned over the years. And if you do sort of do this on a daily basis, right? If you model a lot of cars, you'll eventually get really good at it and probably be way better than I am at it, right? Develop your own techniques, your own little workflows that's just going to work way better for you. This is another sort of challenging area right here. You can see that I just ended up deleting a lot of those edges past where that tire is towards the back, because again, I'm going to put the fender well or fender flare right there, and we're going to delete all of that whole area right there where that tire is. So I'm not super concerned with those that big end-gon right there that I've created. So here you can see that I just didn't like what I had there and I just deleted it, and here I'm going to try it a different way, right? You try it one way, it doesn't work, you try it a different way. And in fact, I even end up deleting this, I believe. All right, I even end up, after I do this, I go back and I just delete that whole edge loop that I made there. I bevel that edge. I noticed that it kind of flared out or kind of folded out a little bit in a weird way. So I thought maybe I would try beveling that edge and then kind of fixing the end-gons there. And that seemed to work okay. I did want to move this edge a little bit further out to round off that corner a little bit. And we're getting close here to the point where I kind of stop and call it a day, right? So I think at this point I'm kind of finishing up. I think at some point I just do a quick subdivide to it to kind of see what it looks like when I'm going to subdivide it, because I am going to subdivide it eventually. And it looks okay. I probably want to reduce the edge flow after I subdivide it a little bit, but for the most part that looks okay. And there you have it. Next, I'm going to jump in and probably start working on the fender flares. And then after I do that, we'll probably subdivide, and we're going to subdivide and reduce. We'll go through and reduce the subdivision that we do. And then I'll just continue with the rest of the body. So that'll be the next video, and I will see you there.